All these guys are from everywhere, from God knows where, some of them. Up in the cold of Maine, or out in Minnesota, or in California. We got half a dozen guys from California on this trip who are they're just a hoot, and they're all about it. They're all about painting and making it happen. This is where we have to be.
I lived in the Cape for quite a while, well, since the early 90s, I guess, and started making a friend here, a friend there. I met Peter Khalil and Jerome Green, who are both artists. Got to know them, painted a little bit with them, and my wife and I moved to Maine, and I thought, well, I'll make new friends up there, which I did, but Pete and Jerome came up to visit, and we were in Wyeth country, we lived a couple miles from Andrew Wyeth, Jamie Wyeth, and a lot of art galleries, and it's beautiful country. And they came up and started painting around, and they just went nuts. They just loved it up there. So when I moved back to Cape Cod, about a year later, they were very disappointed. And I said, "What'd you move back here for?" And I said, "I thought maybe you missed me." And he said, "Well, we have no one to go visit now in Maine." So we said, "Well, let's plan a trip." So we went up painting up in Maine together. We're on the same territory. We invited Frank Gardner from Mexico, who was a friend of Peter's. So it was a cold October, a lot colder than right now. And it was about 4 or 5 of us painting, and it was just a real fun time. We had a one-bedroom house, and we all just packed into it. And we came back, and there was some attention from the Cape Museum. They gave a show to show some of the paintings, and some of the other people heard about it. We have a friend who's originally from L.A., Logan Hajish, and he said, "That seemed like a lot of fun, and if you ever do that again, why don't you let me know?" And I have some friends out from the West Coast who maybe never even been out here. Maybe they'd really like to come out and paint Maine. So we did that. We suddenly, from a group of 4 or 5, it turned into a group of 12 painting in Port Clyde, Maine. And that was a terrific time. We had a blast for about 2 weeks. We went to Monhegan Island and painted around the town of Port Clyde, and that got a lot of attention.
When we first went up to Port Clyde, everyone was a little bit kind of unknowing of what it was going to be like. We had guys coming from the West Coast who we didn't know, some from other parts of the country, and so there was kind of an East Coast, West Coast contingent. But what was amazing and really fabulous is very quickly we all connected very much around the painting.
Then people kept saying, "Well, where are you going next?" And so we don't know. And so well, the Maine house was so wonderful, we'll just keep going back there every year. But Frank said, "Well, we've already done Maine. Why don't you come visit me?" And so then Frank organized a trip to central Mexico, San Miguel de Allende, and I didn't think we'd be able to get 12 to 15 guys down there, but we managed to. And so a simple painting trip turned into an international expedition to foreign land where we were painting in Mexico and riding on the horses, and turned into a real adventure. So rather than just being a very quiet lifestyle of a Sunday painter, we were out traveling the world and acting like cowboys. And then after that, they were saying, "Where are you going next?" And so we decided, why don't we just stay close to home and come to Provincetown, which has a very rich art heritage. And we spend a lot of time ourselves painting here, Jerome and Peter and I, Jeff Benasia, and Logan spends a lot of time here. But we thought some of these guys, we'd like them to come and see our home turf and paint with us here.
Painting is really a very solitary kind of thing for a lot of people. You're either out painting alone outside in plein air, or you're working a lot in a studio, which is very rewarding in its own ways. But getting together with a group like this, first of all, there's a phenomenally talented group of people. I feel like I should be carrying their bags most of the time.
The plein air trips I take with my friends have been part of this camaraderie experience that I really value. And I think for an artist, it is important to be around other artists.
We're lucky to be able to have this group of artist friends, all around the same age, and you have the same influences and same ideas about art, and it makes being a painter a whole lot easier and a lot more fun too.
We have some interesting talks about things, you know, art and galleries and history and all kinds of fun stuff. You know, it's just like-minded people that are working down the same road that I'm on. It's a great way to relate to people.
Anytime you can disconnect from your daily life, it's easier to focus on your work. You know, for me, I'm about 6 hours from home. I live up in Maine, so it's easier to be able to just totally work on paintings all day. Last night we ate dinner, started painting portraits. Then people started playing guitar, and a couple of us painted the guys playing guitar, and you know, just woke up this morning, went out painting again, nothing else to think about. You know, it's just a retreat, basically.
When everyone kind of returns to the house at the end of the day, it's quite tiring sometimes because you've been out all day and, you know, braving the elements or whatever, and people will yell out, you know, did you get one? And it was like you're fishing or something. Did you catch anything, you know? And some days you do, and it's wonderful, and it just happens naturally, organically, and some days you're scraping stuff off and it's not really working for you.
We all kind of learn from each other and listen to each other, and sometimes somebody has something poignant to say about not just art, but the business end of this, which is a pain in the butt.
Some nights people will go out and do nocturnes, and they have you know, they'll put on flashlights on their heads like miners, and they're out there by the rocks, or, you know, you see them down the street and they're knocking out another one.
And this is my first trip here, but you know, right away I felt welcome. I felt, you know, like accepted, and that people were supportive and interested and interesting, but interested in what was going on with everybody else.
A big part of it's having a good time with all your friends that you don't get to see too often because you're always alone working in your studio.
I think just the camaraderie, sharing this crazy choice of career path with other like-minded individuals. And plus Frank brings bottles of tequila from Mexico, which are really good.
This is all about painting. We had a few days of rain, and it kind of messed us up. We had to go inside and paint from the model, which was really tough to take. We had 4 different absolutely beautiful models. They were spectacular. But now it's all about painting outside and painting, working from life.
Maybe in 50 or 100 years, the historians might look back at some of the group, you know, the artists in this group, and say, wow, there was this time where they painted with these guys and those people and those individuals at this particular location, and look how their work changed and look how their work evolved because of that one experience.
You know, kind of an immersion in creativity when we get together. It's, gets us out of the solitary artist mode and share, you know.
Somebody's listening to you?
Yeah, they're making jokes.
That's a part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, there's lots of jokes.
See, you can pick on them, right?
You got to be able to take it or you can't come back.
I painted all my life. My father was a commercial artist, so I was encouraged to pursue any kind of artistic bent that I had any given time. So I've kind of painted and drawn and sketched and done all the little things that we all do, but I banged nails for a lot of years. I was in the construction industry. I did doors and windows and siding and all sorts of different fun stuff to make a living while I was raising a family.
I've done this as a career my entire life. I mean, I was drawing many, many hours a day, all the way through school. And it seemed like a good thing to do. I drew pictures of Big Daddy I'd rock cars.
Yeah!
I drew my somewhat mistaken ideas of female anatomy. I drew jet planes shooting. I drew exclamation points from their wings, dashes.
Even though I came from a family that were all in and are still in the medical field, I always just had that desire to create and didn't really care for science or other subjects at school. It was always I always just had a lot of fun drawing and painting and sculpting.
It was something I always sort of felt I was going to be doing. I was taking oil painting classes, actually started with watercolor. And then when I finished up high school, I knew what I was going to do. It was just a matter of figuring out where I wanted to go study. So I had a couple different choices for that. And I had great support from my family, my parents, for that.
I knew I liked painting and liked making art, and I always said I'd be an artist one day, but I didn't really think about what that meant or what it would take to get there. But when I was at the school, a college recruiter from Rhode Island School of Design came, and they started talking about art college, which was a new idea to me. And then talking to my mom about it that night, we found out there was an arts high school downtown in Baltimore, and that's when I sort of made the transition over there. And that sort of night, finding out about sort of what the path was going to be and how much work was going to be involved in getting to make art in whatever way I decided to do it in the end. That was sort of an eye-opener, I guess. And that's when I realized, I really would like to do this.
My grandfather was a painter. I grew up with paintings all over the house, landscapes of Vermont and rural New York, upstate New York, around where we lived. To look at those and admire them, and I was always, drawn to pictures like that. And my mother actually used to encourage me, to not waste my talent, or she would say that, if I had talent, I shouldn't waste it. Might as well use it. So I tried to do that. First time I tried to draw realistically, I was just bored. And so I picked out a piece of paper and I started drawing, tried to draw a portrait of Steve McQueen. And I worked on it real hard, and at the end of the day, people came and they knew who it was. So I was really proud that people could actually tell who it was. Which is an accomplishment, because it didn't, you could say, yeah, that looks like a face. But to actually look like a person that I thought that was pretty good. So, and I think I was a shy kid, so any way I could get attention, I probably would, do whatever I could to just get some positive reinforcement. And drawing was one way I would get some reinforcement.
There was an art director who I knew who was in his 60s, and to me that was quite old at the time. I was in my 20s, and I went into his office where he had an easel and he was working on stuff, and his office was filled with these beautiful paintings, watercolors, and I said, "Where did you get these? These are gorgeous." And he said, "I did them." And it struck me, I wanted to do that. I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to experience what that was like. And I didn't think it would be easy to do, and it's not. But it was a journey that I started on, and that was the inspiration.
Instead of taking the university route, I tried to search out artists that I respected, and I thought that they would be able to teach me something about the craft of painting. It's really how painting has been taught throughout other time periods in the history of art. It's knowledge has been passed on from teacher to student in a much more personal way than the university system.
Excuse me, see the truck coming?
Oh, okay, we gotta get out of the way. All right.
Cool. I always had an interest in art. But after high school, I kind of started to take things seriously. Went to a school that was kind of figure drawing and painting. I went to that school to learn how to draw better, just so I could be an animator. So I worked in animation for less than a year. I hated it, and I was taking all these life drawing classes and painting classes, and I just kind of fell in love with that, and decided I wanted to be a gallery artist and just work on paintings and show them in galleries.
As an artist, I think you should paint what you're interested in at any given moment. And if you look back at a lot of artists throughout history, they may paint people at one moment and a landscape another, and interiors, exteriors. Whatever they see visually that grabs them. And I suppose some people have real specialties. They'll paint one thing a lot, exclusively. But I like to mix it up. So if I want to paint a pretty model, I'll do that. If I want to paint outside, I'll do that.
A lot of what we do is for our own benefit, for our own selves, for our own enjoyment and passion of trying to master a certain technique or a certain approach in our work. There's a sense of self-discovery that is a kind of natural part of what we do.
You know what kind of pictures sell best? Really good pictures. What works best for me is to make really, really good paintings that are compelling. And then any good dealer should be able to sell it. If they can't, I'll find somebody who can. It's making them, and making them as good as they need to be. That's the hard part.
I think it's just the actual physical process of painting that appeals to me. Kind of taking these tubes of pigments and turning them into something.
Well, there are a lot of people who are fine artists, supposedly quote-unquote fine artists, who I think are basically in it for commercial reasons, and maybe they're doing something that sells, and they do it over and over. If I ask myself, well, who's going to buy this dark corner of the room with this doorway in the background, I might have said, well, maybe I better go paint something else. But I thought, well, I'll give it a try and see what happens. If you like it, usually someone else will like it, hopefully.
The more you paint, the more complex the information you're dealing with gets. In the beginning, it's just getting the values right. Even throughout it, you still have to keep the fundamentals in mind, but in the beginning, you use very simple ideas and try and get better at those. And as you get better, then there's a lot more information to juggle around. But you also just have a lot more tools in your belt to use.
And you live in this space, and you're living in that space, in the light. And when you get into that place mentally, you get out of your own way. It can be very successful and rewarding. You can paint for hours, and the only time you stop is when you realize you have to go to the bathroom or you're very thirsty.
Sometimes you get something going in a painting, and it can get you even more excited than the scene first got you. Like, for instance, on this boat over here, we can look directly at where the blackest part or the darkest part of the bow hits the sky, and it can look, like black. But when we look at that blackest part of the bow, which seems to carry down to the blue here, it actually shows a color in the black. It all depends on where we're looking, I think, that you get these different things. And you can choose to use them or not in your painting, but some of the best paintings I've seen are the ones that they choose to use stuff like that. If it just really makes you feel alive, it's probably something you should be doing. Look at the light on the walk right now.
We're all trying to search for some connection in life, right? We all want to connect to somebody or something. And I think for myself personally, but through my work, my hope is to connect to other people, but also help other people connect to something deeper, something beautiful, something maybe spiritual, if you will, but something that's beyond just my own opinion.
To learn to paint, it's really important to be painting from life. You don't necessarily have to be painting outside. You can paint out a window, you can paint still lives, figures inside, whatever. But painting from life, there's a lot more color and a lot more information to deal with and a lot more decisions to be made. I think it's vastly superior for learning to paint. The colors are a lot richer. There's a lot just with the changing sun and weather conditions while you're on site, and people coming and going. Today I was painting a boat and the boat drove away, and you just have to, you learn to paint fast and think fast, and it sort of it loosens you up in a nice way and gets you to think about what's really essential, and I just found it a nice way to work.
I think there's so much you actually can see when you're out there that you don't typically see in a studio, whether it's reflected light and atmosphere and things like that create colors that, if you're patient and you're looking, you see color that you tend to miss maybe if you're just always hunkered down in a studio.
I've had very many cold experiences painting and very hot. But yeah, painting outdoors I think is really important to me because of the subtle nuances that the eye can see. It's being outdoors and seeing those colors and reacting to it, and seeing sort of where I'm at personally that day, and seeing what's really speaking to me, and how to create something that can carry that across.
And for guys who paint outside, it's a good thing to do with someone else, particularly if you forget something. Or you fall down out in the woods and break your leg. If you're going to be good at it and you're going to make any money at it, you work your tail off and you'd make more money doing Mary Kay. The same amount of work put into Mary Kay, I'd be a rich man right now. Can a man sell Mary Kay? I don't know, but if you can, that's what I should have done. I just know it.
The Malcolm Gladwell book, I forget which one it was, Outliers, I think, where he talked about what it takes to become what it takes to be successful in any field, no matter what it is, and that no matter what you're doing, it's going to take at least 10,000 hours of work time to become an expert in your field, to become like truly one of the goods or the greats or whatever it would be. So I think I probably have another 1,000 or 2,000 hours to go.
As an artist, I get way too hung up on what the paintings actually look like. But when you get out there in the marketplace, there's all kinds of other stuff going on. It has nothing to do with that, over which you generally have no control. You're not even present. There's some dealer there. So you never know. Somebody comes in, and they like your painting, they're going to buy your painting, and they send their interior decorator in. The interior decorator looks at it and says, "Oh no, that's so last year." And there goes the sale. You didn't even know what happened. It happened.
It's definitely an earned profession. I don't think it's a learned profession. That might be a quote for a t-shirt.
This is the end of our 2-week painting trip to Provincetown. 2 weeks ago, none of this existed, and here it is now. What was it like? Exhausting. It was very tiring, but it was a lot of fun, and it's always inspiring to work with other artists, very talented people from all over.
What I get out of it, I got to hang with my buddies for another 2 weeks of another year. Wake up in the morning and paint. Go eat something for lunch, paint. Go to dinner, paint.
Well, the fun thing about this trip was getting to paint figures. I spent almost 6 days painting figures this week, and that was really a big deal. I never get to do that. I'm out painting landscape all the time.
It's been really intense to get to spend so much time with good friends and just painting nonstop. Like last night we were up till 3 in the morning painting portraits of each other, and then today we were just going to wind down and take it easy, and Jerome and I ended up painting for another hour anyway, even though we were planning on just packing up.
I was up till 2:30 last night painting portraits, pirate portraits in the pirate ship. Why? It was the last night for painting. We had to end on a bang.
I would do it again tomorrow. I would do it again. I would do it all the time if I had the chance to live this life and to paint with this group of artists. I would not stop. So yeah.
And when everyone gets together and smiles, laughs, and has a drink, it's something you just don't think you'll see. It's something that you just wouldn't imagine happening 150 years ago.
it's definitely something that you know you're born to do when you're younger. I think that all of us have felt that this is what we're supposed to be doing, and you know, some people are supposed to be stockbrokers or doctors and lawyers or whatever, and that's great because the world needs that, I guess. But I think it's more important to do what I'm doing, just because somebody's gonna do it.
So where's hair and makeup? Are they coming? Dan, your hair and makeup, right? Maybe a little red on the lips, maybe just a little bit.
When I heard that was coming, Stapleton Kearns, I was psyched because he's an old guy. How'd you like that, Stape? Ah!
So if you weren't going to be an artist, what would you be?
I think I'd have been a thoracic surgeon.
Paul told me you were a bit like Zappa, and I just heard a Zappaism there.
What's the name of this picture? I think I'll call this painting Osama, Drowning Kittens.
I don't have a favorite color. I have favorite color relationships. It's not the color on its own, it's how the color relates to the colors around it, right? Preach!
You know, there's a secret to this. There's a trick to this kind of painting.
Paint with the numbers, right?
No, you got to put butter in your shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. Why?
Makes of your entire body a giant electromagnet.
I don't know. Probably should have asked me if I like taking long walks on the beach.
What was it like this time?
This time? Well, it's a little personal. No. Edit. Okay, cut. Take 2.